Dear friends, today we shall reflect on the servant leadership of Jesus, a topic that is quite relevant in our day to day lives and something that we will witness during the Last Supper of the Lord. Now, when we generally take a look at the world around us, we see that leaders lead from the front and people follow them. Leaders sit triumphant upon their thrones and their subjects minister to them. Now, that is the conventional wisdom that goes around. We see that kings and prophets, gurus and godsmen, heroes of myths, legends, and various scriptures of the world, even those wearing the garb of the forest dwellers, the sackcloth and ashes of ascetics, all of them are served by their disciples and admirers. In fact, everyone except Jesus. And we see that Jesus kind of revolutionized the whole concept of leadership and, in a way, turned it on its head. He said, "Whoever would be the first among you must be the slave of all." And we find this in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 44. Now, this theme runs, in fact, through all of the three synoptic Gospels. We find it in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 20, verses 26 to 27, and also in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 22, verse 26. In fact, the whole mission of Jesus was one of service. His miracles were not meant to dazzle and confound people, but they were meant to serve people, to help them, to make them come closer to God. And then, in one of the most astonishing acts in recorded history, he, the master and teacher, assuming the role of the lowliest of minions, knelt down and washed the feet of his disciples. By this one dramatic deed, he seared into their minds how the good news was to be taken to the world. The resurrected Christ would entrust to his disciples the Great Commission or the Great Command to spread the gospel to all nations. But the suffering Christ, on the eve of his crucifixion, demonstrated to them the manner in which this commission was to be carried out. Inspired by Jesus, we see that both Peter and Paul explain what leadership means in the Christian context. Peter advises that a leader should be like a shepherd watching over God's flock, not under compulsion but willingly, not pursuing dishonest gain but eager to assist, not lording it over but serving. Paul says, "Through love, serve one another." And here are some significant characteristics of servant leadership in the image of Jesus. We see that a servant leader is honest and humble. To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. We find this in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 3. And we see that Jesus repeatedly preached that those who are humble will be exalted. And we find this in Luke chapter 14, verses 10 to 11. Now we see that a servant leader is also very flexible. In the stinging rebuke to those who put the letter of the law above its spirit, Jesus observed that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And therefore a servant leader is willing to listen to those she or he leads. And most importantly, he or she is ready to learn from them, because all have value, all have talent, and all have worth. A servant leader is also a steward. So often we see that Jesus used the imagery of a steward in his parables. Now, a steward is one who is faithful, a one who faithfully tends to what is entrusted to his or her care. And Peter says, as each has received a gift, Each one needs to use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Another interesting quality of a servant leader is compassion. Paul wrote to the Christians in Rome, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep." Perhaps most significant of all, a servant leader is a witness. Christ's whole life was a witness to the message of the Father. The essence and purpose of servant leadership is to bear witness and, like Saint Ignatius, resolve that all must be done for the greater glory of God. Ad maiorem Dei gloriam. So, dear friends, as we participate in the liturgical service during Maundy Thursday, let us reflect and keep this in mind, that just as Christ's whole mission was meant to serve others, was meant to help others, that we too, through our words, through our deeds, may reach out to others and therefore help Christ in building the kingdom of God.